The galaxy had been listening for centuries. Every species with the technology to scan the void did so. The Dranaki, with their crystalline logic engines. The Vorath, whose neural networks spanned entire star systems. The Quilnari, masters of quantum thought. All of them had detected the signal. All of them had tried to decode it. None of them succeeded. It came from deep space, far beyond the rim of known territory. A repeating pulse, mathematical and precise, buried in layers of encryption so dense it seemed almost alive. The signal had no origin point. No trace of the civilization that sent it. Just a ghost in the dark, whispering in a language no one understood. The Galactic Assembly debated for decades. Was it a warning? A trap? A test? They built supercomputers the size of moons. They hired the brightest minds from 1,000 worlds. Nothing worked. The signal remained silent, locked behind walls of code that bent and shifted every time someone tried to break through. And then humanity arrived. Humans were new to the galaxy. Barely 200 years since their first warp flight. Their ships were clunky and loud. Their diplomats often confused. They didn't have neural hives or quantum processors or centuries of accumulated wisdom. What they had was curiosity. And stubbornness. And a strange habit of solving problems no one asked them to solve. When the assembly mentioned the signal in passing, the human delegation didn't nod politely and move on. They asked questions. Hundreds of them. Could they see the data? Could they take a copy? Could they try? The assembly didn't expect much. But they had nothing to lose. Dr. Elena Vasquez sat in a cramped research station orbiting Earth's moon, staring at the signal for the first time. She wasn't a quantum physicist. She wasn't a linguist. She was a cognitive scientist who studied how brains recognize patterns. Her team was small. 3 people. A server rack. A coffee machine that broke every other week. This thing has been stumping the galaxy for 200 years, said Marcus, her assistant, scrolling through the Dranaki analysis reports. You really think we can crack it? I think, Elena said slowly, that everyone's been thinking like machines. Maybe the signal isn't meant for machines. She opened the raw data. At first, it looked like chaos. Pulses and frequencies layered over each other, shifting in rhythms that made no sense. But Elena didn't try to decode it mathematically. She did something simpler. She turned it into sound. The lab filled with noise. High-pitched chirps. Deep thrums. Patterns that rose and fell like waves. Marcus grimaced. That's just static. No, Elena whispered. Listen. She adjusted the playback speed. Slowed it down. Filtered out the upper frequencies. And there, buried in the hum, was something else. A rhythm. Not perfect. Not mechanical. But organic. Like a heartbeat. It's not code, she said, her voice trembling. It's music. Over the next 3 days, Elena's team worked without sleep. They treated the signal like a song, breaking it into verses and refrains. They found harmonics. Repetitions. Variations. And slowly, the message began to emerge. It wasn't a language in the traditional sense. It was a story. A memory. The signal was a record of a civilization that had died long ago, encoded not in logic but in emotion. It spoke of beauty and loss. Of discovery and extinction. Of a people who had reached for the stars and found only silence. And at the end, a single question, encoded in the final pulse: are we alone? Elena sent the translation to the Galactic Assembly. The response was immediate. Shock. Disbelief. And then, something humanity had never seen before. The galaxy went silent. For 3 full days, no government spoke. No debates were held. Every species, every world, every station, stopped what they were doing and listened to the signal again. This time, they heard it. The grief. The hope. The longing. When the assembly reconvened, the Dranaki Archon, a being of pure logic and reason, addressed the human delegation directly. "We have been searching for answers in equations," it said. "You found them in feeling." "How?" Elena stood before the chamber, small and tired and human. "Because we know what it's like to be alone," she said. "We spent thousands of years thinking we were the only ones. And when we finally found you, we realized the universe is bigger and stranger than we ever imagined. Maybe the signal wasn't meant to be solved. Maybe it was meant to be understood." The Archon was silent for a long moment. Then it bowed. "We have underestimated you." Elena smiled. "Everyone does." The discovery changed everything. Humanity wasn't just another species anymore. They were the ones who heard the song. The ones who answered a question the galaxy had ignored. And as word spread, something else began to happen. Other signals. Other mysteries. Problems the galaxy had given up on. Slowly, one by one, humans started solving them too. Not because they were smarter. Not because they were stronger. But because they refused to stop asking why. The galaxy didn't know what to do with humanity's discovery. For weeks after Elena Vasquez decoded the signal, the Galactic Assembly held emergency sessions. Scientists demanded access to human research methods. Philosophers debated the meaning of the ancient message. Historians scrambled to find records of the lost civilization. But no one could agree on the most important question: should anyone respond? The Dranaki said no. Logic dictated caution. The signal was millions of years old. Whatever sent it was long gone. Responding would be pointless, perhaps even dangerous. The Vorath agreed. Their neural networks calculated risk factors. Broadcasting into the void invited attention. Attention meant exposure. Exposure meant vulnerability. The Quilnari abstained. Quantum uncertainty made prediction impossible. Better to wait. Observe. Do nothing. But humanity had already made their decision. 3 weeks after the translation, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the same lunar research station, now surrounded by engineers, musicians, linguists, and artists. They had built something new. Not a message encoded in mathematics. Not a sterile data packet. But a reply in the same language the ancient signal had used: music and memory. They called it the human chorus. It began with sound. Laughter from a child in Beijing. A street musician's guitar in Sao Paulo. The roar of a rocket launch. Rain on a rooftop in Lagos. Voices singing in 100 languages. They wove it together, layer by layer, into a harmony that told humanity's story. Not perfect. Not polished. But honest. Then came images. A farmer planting seeds. A doctor saving a life. A teacher in a one-room school. A couple dancing under stars. Moments of struggle and joy, failure and triumph. The message wasn't about how advanced humanity was. It was about who they were. And at the end, humanity answered the ancient question. Are we alone? No. Not anymore. We heard you. And we're here. Elena transmitted the chorus into deep space, aimed at the coordinates where the original signal had been detected. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't wait for debate. She just sent it. The assembly erupted. The Dranaki Archon arrived at the lunar station within hours, flanked by security drones. You have acted without authorization, it said, its voice sharp and crystalline. You have broadcast humanity's location. You have invited contact with forces unknown. This is reckless. Elena stood her ground. The signal asked if they were alone. We said no. That's not reckless. That's human. You do not understand the dangers. Maybe not, she interrupted. But I understand what it's like to shout into the dark and hear nothing back. We're not leaving anyone unanswered. Not if we can help it. The Archon stared at her for a long moment. Then it left without another word. For 3 months, nothing happened. The galaxy moved on. The human chorus became a footnote in assembly records. Some called it brave. Others called it foolish. Humanity didn't care. They had said what needed to be said. And then, the responses began. The first came from a dead star system on the edge of the Perseus arm. A pulse. Short. Simple. Musical. It repeated the final notes of the human chorus, then added its own melody. A confirmation. A greeting. The second came 2 days later. Then a third. A fourth. Within a week, 17 signals had arrived from across the galaxy, each one different, each one responding to humanity's message. They weren't from living civilizations. They were from archives. Beacons. Message relays left behind by species long extinct, programmed to activate only when someone reached out. The galaxy was full of them. Ghosts waiting for a voice. And humanity had given them one. The assembly convened in emergency session again, but this time the mood was different. Awe had replaced anger. The Vorath presented their analysis. The signals contained knowledge. Star charts. Scientific theories. Cultural records. Each one was a fragment of a lost people, preserved in the hope that someday, someone would care enough to listen. These archives have been silent for eons, the Vorath speaker said. We passed them by, dismissed them as noise. But humans, you did not ignore them. You answered. Elena watched from the gallery as the assembly debated what to do next. The Dranaki proposed caution. Study the archives carefully. Proceed slowly. The Quilnari suggested forming committees. The Vorath wanted risk assessments. But humanity was already moving. Across human space, volunteers organized expeditions. Not military fleets. Not corporate ventures. Just people. Scientists and teachers, engineers and artists, historians and dreamers. They called themselves the Chorus Fleet. Their mission was simple: find the archives, listen to the stories, and make sure no one was forgotten. The first ship launched from Mars. Captain Amara Okafor, a former freight pilot, stood on the bridge and addressed her crew. We're not conquerors, she said. We're not colonizers. We're archivists. Witnesses. The galaxy has been silent too long. Let's wake it up. Her ship, the Remembrance, headed for the nearest archive signal, a relay station orbiting a neutron star. The crew didn't know what they'd find. They didn't know if it was safe. But they went anyway, because that's what humans do. Back on Earth, Elena received a transmission from the Dranaki Archon. It was brief. You were right, it said. We have been thinking like machines. Perhaps it is time we learn to think like you. Elena smiled. You're welcome to join us. Across the galaxy, civilizations that had spent millennia in isolation began to stir. The Quilnari dispatched observers. The Vorath sent research vessels. Even the Dranaki, logical and cautious, began constructing archive recovery ships. Humanity had done something no one expected. They hadn't conquered the galaxy. They hadn't outsmarted it. They had simply refused to let it stay silent. And the silence, it turned out, had been waiting for someone to break it. Captain Amara Okafor had seen a lot in her 20 years piloting cargo ships across human space. Asteroid fields. Solar storms. The cold beauty of dead worlds. But nothing prepared her for the archive. The Remembrance dropped out of warp near the neutron star, and there it was. A structure older than most civilizations in the galaxy, drifting in perfect orbit, untouched by time. It was massive, carved from some dark metallic substance that seemed to absorb light. Symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly, pulsing in rhythm with the signal they had followed. "Scan complete," said her engineer, a quiet man named Yuto. "No weapons. No defense systems. It's just, waiting." Amara took a breath. "Then let's not keep it waiting." The boarding team suited up. 6 people. No soldiers. Just scientists, linguists, and one very nervous historian named Priya who wouldn't stop double-checking her equipment. They crossed the void in a shuttle, docked with the archive's entry port, and stepped inside. The interior was breathtaking. Corridors stretched in every direction, lined with crystalline panels that flickered to life as they passed. Holographic images appeared. Faces. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Beings of every shape and size, frozen in moments of joy, sorrow, wonder. A child laughing. An elder teaching. 2 figures embracing under twin suns. "These are people," Priya whispered. "This whole place is a memorial." They moved deeper. The archive responded to their presence, projecting more images, more sounds. Music played, soft and haunting. Voices spoke in languages no translator could understand, but the meaning was clear. These were lives. Stories. Memories of a species that had known they were dying and had chosen to preserve not their technology or their weapons, but themselves. At the center of the archive, they found the core. A chamber filled with light, where a single holographic figure waited. It was humanoid, but only barely. Its form shimmered, translucent, ancient beyond measure. It spoke. The words came through their translators, slow and deliberate. "You answered." Amara stepped forward. "We did. We sent our song into the void," the figure said. "We knew we would not survive. Our star was dying. Our world was ending. But we hoped. We hoped that someday, someone would hear us. Someone would remember." Priya's voice cracked. "We remember." The figure's form brightened. "Then we are not forgotten. That is enough." The archive began to open. Data flooded their systems. Not weapons designs. Not military secrets. But art. Philosophy. Science. Stories. The entire history of a people who had lived, loved, struggled, and vanished. They had left it all behind, not as a warning, but as a gift. "Why?" Amara asked. "Why send this into the dark?" "You couldn't have known," anyone would answer. "Because hope does not require certainty," the figure said. "We believed that somewhere, someone would care. And you proved us right." The hologram began to fade. "We left others like this. Across the stars. Each one a voice. Each one waiting. You have given them purpose again. Thank you." And then it was gone. The crew of the Remembrance stood in silence. Priya was crying. Yuto stared at the walls, his hands trembling. Amara felt something heavy settle in her chest. Not sadness. Responsibility. They brought the archive data back to the Galactic Assembly. The chamber was packed. Every species, every delegate, every leader watched as the recordings played. The lives of a people long dead, now seen for the first time in millions of years. The Dranaki Archon spoke first. "This changes everything. These archives are not relics. They are voices. And we have been ignoring them." The Vorith speaker nodded. "We calculated the value of these signals and found none. We were wrong." The Quilnari observer, a being of shifting probability, shimmered. "Humanity did not solve a puzzle. They answered a question we did not know we were being asked." Dr. Elena Vasquez stood before them all, exhausted but steady. The signal asked if they were alone. We said no. But we weren't just answering them. We were answering for ourselves. Because every time we reach out, every time we listen, we prove that we're not alone either. The assembly voted unanimously. The archives would be recovered, preserved, shared. A new branch of the Galactic Assembly was formed, dedicated entirely to this mission. They called it the Archive Coalition. And humanity, the youngest species, the ones who had been underestimated for so long, were given a seat at its head. But humanity didn't stop there. Across human space, a new tradition began. Every ship, every station, every colony transmitted their own message into the void. Not grand declarations. Not boasts of power. Just stories. A farmer describing the first harvest on a new world. A child reading a poem. A couple celebrating their 50th anniversary. Humanity filled the galaxy with voices, making sure that if they ever vanished, someone would remember. Other species joined in. The Dranaki added their logic songs. The Vorith shared neural symphonies. The Quilnari sent probability equations that bloomed like flowers. The galaxy, once silent, became a chorus. Years later, Captain Amara Okafor retired. She gave one final interview before she left public life. People ask me what humanity's legacy will be, she said. They want to know if we'll be remembered for our technology, our ships, our discoveries. But I think our legacy is simpler than that. We're the ones who answered. We're the ones who refused to let the universe stay quiet. And because of that, no one will ever be forgotten again. Somewhere, deep in the void, an ancient archive drifted in silence. Its signal had gone unanswered for eons. But then, one day, it received a transmission. A voice. A song. A message from a species that had heard its story and promised to carry it forward. The archive listened. And for the first time in millions of years, it was not alone.